Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin signed a Democrat-sponsored bill to allow for same-sex marriage in Virginia. Now, probably some of you, or at least, are wondering why such a bill like this ever even reached the governor's desk, given the fact that the Supreme Court's Obergefell decision back in 2015 legalized same-sex marriage nationally. Well, it's a good question, but some people are saying this legislation that Youngkin signed on Friday is just largely a symbolic measure in case the Supreme Court ever reverses that Obergefell decision. But a bigger question in all of this is, what effects could this have on Christians? What effect could this have on others in Virginia who don't subscribe to the redefinition of marriage? And, even further, what could this possibly reveal about Governor Youngkin and other Republican candidates if they have some additional national ambitions politically? Well, joining me now to discuss this is Victoria Cobb. She's the president of the Family Foundation of Virginia. Victoria, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Thanks so much for having me.
Well, great to have you. So let's just get kind of an overview of this bill. Explain a little more detail what this bill does and how it could potentially affect the people of faith there in Virginia.
Yeah, you were very much on point, which is that same-sex marriage is functionally happening in Virginia, not by the will of the people, but by a court decision. We actually have a constitutional amendment that had secured traditional marriage prior to Obergefell. But this is really a bill that was their effort to codify same-sex marriage, to get it into our code so that it is written down somewhere, to your point, in case Obergefell ever was reversed. We've seen this obviously in the abortion debate after Roe, so we know that does happen. And so it was a definition put into the code, and then it had a sort of a fig leaf of a religious liberty component to it, saying that if you're a clerk, so this is in the section of the code about what clerks can do and related to their jobs in the marriage space specifically. And so it has a little bit of a religious, if you're a religious group or you're a religious clerk, a religious person presiding over marriage, you don't have to do something against your will. So that's what it is. And it does a number of things that concern us. Primarily, it simply gives fodder to the LGBT movement that thinks they continue to gain ground in Virginia on these things. And we do have functional concerns that if you're, for example, a legislator and you preside over weddings, what's not written in the religious freedom component of this bill is people like that. They aren't necessarily doing something religious in nature. They aren't necessarily religious groups providing a marriage. So we're a little concerned about, does this exclude some people?
Yeah, I'm extremely concerned about this as well, Victoria, along with millions of other people. Look, our Constitution is not to be fragmented. It does not apply to this group of people and does not apply to another group of people. Religious liberties are for all Americans, whether they be pastors or whether they be a florist or a baker or whatever else. We all have the right to stand to our religious beliefs, to present those beliefs in public, and to be protected of holding to those beliefs without fear of government retribution or persecution. So what kind of punishment, as you share your concerns with this, what kind of punishment could we see potentially for Christians in Virginia for embracing a biblical worldview of marriage?
Well, this is just the concern. We continue to be concerned about religious freedom, sort of statements that are written by the other side that leave people out. And also, we'd like to believe there are still people who might not even be people of faith who know what marriage is. It was, it was a definition, a very specific definition for all of humankind until very, very recently. And so it's also just a matter of conscience for some people. But beyond that, the language in this bill also differentiates between sex and gender. So we haven't even quite gotten to that discussion. And that, I think, has more implication than even codifying same-sex marriage, because everywhere we put into our code that somehow sex and gender are different, we know the fallout of that. We know that means there are boys in girls' sports. We know that means there are boys in girls' bathrooms. We have got to stop pretending, along with the left, that there is some differentiation, that there are all these different genders and that there could be more than two of them, and that they are different than somebody's biological sex. That has tremendous implication.
Absolutely. Well, what do you say? And our time, unfortunately, is slipping away from us. But what is your opinion about Governor Youngkin and other Republicans who may have national ambitions? I mean, they clearly wish this issue would go away. But do you get the sense that some Republicans believe that they have to cave on this issue if they're ever going to stand a chance in a general election?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question. There are Republican strategists, there are log cabin Republicans that are pushing these elected officials to say, this ship has sailed, don't be on the correct side of this, just come along and sign these bills. But I think it's going to matter in primaries. I really do. I think there's still a very large portion of the Republican Party that cares very much what the definition of marriage is, does not want to be on the wrong side of the law, whether it's with pronouns or anything else, simply because they're people of faith. And so I do think the governor is going to have to stand by this in future if he has future aspirations nationally or otherwise. And I think it's harmful. And the articles are making a big deal about the fact that he's a Christian and he did this, which of course they are. They want this is their goal. Their entire goal is to say people of faith are coming around and they're going to be okay with this too. That's really part of the underlying effort here.
Yeah, it really is disturbing. Victoria, thank you so much for joining us on Washington Watch and for giving your perspective on this. I think the governor has stepped in a mess. If he has political ambitions, this could be extremely harmful for him in the future.